The ancient fleet floated silently in the darkness of space, its metal hulls reflecting the dim light of distant stars. Captain Marcus Stone stood on the bridge of the Star Seeker, his four eyes narrowing as he studied the massive ships through the main viewport. His gray skin wrinkled in what his species considered a smile, but it wasn't a kind one. "Look at those crude designs," he said, gesturing at the fleet with one of his upper arms. "They barely look space-worthy. The Galactic Council won't be impressed with this discovery." Dr. Reed moved closer to the viewport, her tentacles shifting colors with excitement, a trait of her species that she had never learned to fully control. "Captain, I'm detecting unusual energy readings from those ships. They're unlike anything in our database." "Probably radiation leaks from their primitive reactor cores," Stone replied, waving his lower hand dismissively. "These relics must be at least 15,000 years old, judging by the decay patterns on their hulls." But Dr. Reed wasn't listening anymore. Her attention was fixed on the readings flowing across her datapad. The numbers made no sense. Energy patterns that seemed to flow backward through time, radiation that curved in impossible ways, and material compositions that shouldn't exist. "Captain," she said, her voice quieter now, "I think we need to take a closer look." Stone sighed. The Galactic Council had tasked them with mapping this sector of space, not wasting time on space junk. But Dr. Reed's reputation for scientific insight was well known throughout the galaxy. If something had caught her attention, it was worth investigating. "Fine," he said. "Prepare a scout team. But make it quick. We have real work to do." Hours later, their shuttle approached the largest ship in the fleet. Up close, the vessel was even more unimpressive. Its hull was marked with crude letters and numbers, barely visible after thousands of years in space. The design was blocky and utilitarian, nothing like the sleek, organic shapes preferred by modern civilizations. The scout team's pilot, Officer Barnes, guided their shuttle toward what appeared to be an entry port. "These ships are huge," he noted. "Whoever built them wasn't thinking about efficiency. Modern ships carry twice as many crew in half the space." As they drew closer, Dr. Reed's instruments began behaving strangely. The energy readings were getting stronger, but they didn't follow any known patterns. According to her readings, the ships were simultaneously dead and humming with power. The docking procedure was surprisingly easy, almost as if the ancient ship had guided them in. The team walked through the airlock, their environmental suits protecting them from the vacuum they expected to find. But the ship wasn't depressurized. The air was old but breathable. The lights were dim but functional. And the gravity. Dr. Reed checked her instruments 3 times, but the reading remained the same. "This is impossible," she whispered. "The gravity field isn't being generated. It's being sculpted, like someone found a way to treat gravity as a solid object and just shaped it." They moved deeper into the ship, finding corridors that seemed to go on forever. The design was simple but somehow elegant, like a puzzle whose solution was just out of reach. Every surface was marked with those same crude letters and numbers, forming words in an ancient language none of them recognized. Then they found the bridge, and everything changed. A massive screen flickered to life as they entered, responding to their presence. Symbols appeared, then transformed into modern galactic standard text. The message was simple but chilling. "Welcome, children of the stars. If you're reading this, it means humanity's wait is finally over. We built this fleet for you, knowing we wouldn't live to see it used. The threat we prepared for is coming. You'll know it when you see it. Everything you need is here, if you're smart enough to understand it." Admiral James Walker, Earth Defense Fleet. Dr. Reed's tentacles had turned pure white, a sign of absolute shock in her species. "Captain," she called over the comm, her voice trembling, "I think we need to contact the Council immediately. We haven't found some primitive fleet. We've found humanity's legacy." In orbit above them, Captain Stone received her message and frowned. Humans. That was impossible. Everyone knew humans had been a primitive species that died out millennia ago. They hadn't even mastered faster-than-light travel before their extinction. The Galactic Council's research team arrived 3 days later. Their ships were beautiful, all curves and living metal, making the ancient fleet look even more primitive in comparison. Dr. Reed watched from the Star Seeker as 20 of the galaxy's finest scientists approached the human vessels. "They're not taking proper precautions," she said, her tentacles turning a worried shade of green. "Those energy readings are still getting stronger." Captain Stone ignored her concerns. The Council had dismissed his initial report about the human origin of the fleet. Humans were primitive creatures, the Council representative had said. They destroyed themselves fighting over their planet's resources. These ships must have been built by a more advanced species. The research team's first transmissions were full of mockery. "Look at these crude metal alloys. Their computer systems are so basic. They didn't even use neural interfaces." Then the screaming started. The ancient fleet had awakened. Lights blazed across the massive ships, not from external sources, but from within the metal itself. The dull gray hull became transparent in places, solid in others, as if the metal was alive and breathing. Complex patterns of light danced across the surfaces, forming symbols that hurt the eyes if you looked at them too long. "Security breach detected," announced a calm voice in perfect galactic standard. "Initiating defense protocols." The research ships tried to retreat. They fired up their engines, but nothing happened. The ancient fleet had somehow turned off their power, something that should have been impossible with modern shielding technology. "How are they doing this?" Captain Stone demanded, watching helplessly as the research vessels were gently pulled into the largest human ship's docking bay. "Their technology is thousands of years old." Dr. Reed's instruments were going crazy. "Captain, I don't think age matters. These ships, they're not just machines. The metal itself seems to be processing information. Every atom is like a tiny computer. Our sensors couldn't detect it before because we were looking for power sources, not this." The voice spoke again. "Research team contained. No casualties detected. Beginning secondary protocols." Huge sections of the fleet's hull became transparent, revealing vast chambers inside. There were gardens growing in zero gravity, their plants forming complex three-dimensional patterns. There were rooms where space itself seemed to twist and fold. And there were laboratories filled with devices that looked deceptively simple, just metal boxes and spheres, but they radiated power that made Dr. Reed's instruments spark and die. "Initiating historical record playback," the voice announced. A hologram appeared in space between the ships. It showed a human woman in a simple uniform, her face tired but determined. "To whoever finds this fleet," she said, "I apologize for the security measures. We had to be sure you were ready. My name is Commander Laura West, and I'm about to tell you the true history of humanity. You see, we weren't primitive. We just looked that way to anyone watching. While other species focused on making their technology more complex, we focused on making it simpler, more elegant. We learned to speak to atoms, to weave space like cloth, to write programs into the fabric of reality itself." The research team was released from the docking bay, but they didn't leave. They couldn't. What they were seeing challenged everything they thought they knew about science and technology. Captain Stone watched in stunned silence as more holograms appeared, showing human achievements that should have been impossible. They hadn't just mastered space travel, they had learned to treat space itself as a tool. They hadn't just built computers, they had turned matter itself into one giant computing system. "So why did we vanish?" Commander West's hologram asked. "Because we saw something coming. Something terrible. And we knew we didn't have time to both fight it and preserve our civilization. So we chose. We poured everything we had into building this fleet. These ships that look so simple on the outside, but contain the sum total of human knowledge and innovation within." The hologram smiled sadly. "We died so you could live. And now, it's time for you to understand why." The hologram of Commander West faded, replaced by a new figure, Admiral James Walker stood tall in his simple white uniform, his gray hair and lined face showing the weight of the decisions he had made. "If you're seeing this," he said, "then Commander West's message has prepared you for what I'm about to say. But nothing can truly prepare you for the truth we discovered." Dr. Reed and Captain Stone had joined the research team inside the flagship. The room they stood in seemed to change as the Admiral spoke, the walls becoming transparent to show the vast emptiness of space around them. 15,000 years ago, Admiral Walker continued, our deep space sensors detected something at the edge of the galaxy, something that shouldn't exist. The space around them, filled with images, massive shapes moving between the stars, darker than the darkness of space itself. "We called them the Void Hunters," he said. "They don't eat stars or planets. They eat something far worse. They consume possibility itself. Every world they touch doesn't just die. It never existed in the first place. They erase entire timelines, feeding on the energy of lost futures." The scientists watched in horror as the images showed entire star systems vanishing, not in explosions or destruction, but in quiet ripples of unmaking. It was like watching someone erase pencil marks from paper, leaving nothing behind but empty space. "We had a choice," Admiral Walker said. "We could try to fight them when they arrived, or we could prepare the galaxy for their coming. We chose the second option. We knew it would take them 15,000 years to reach the galaxy's edge. That gave us time. Time to build this fleet, time to perfect our weapons, time to leave behind everything you need to survive." Captain Stone stepped forward. "But why did humans have to die? Why not stick around to fight them yourselves?" The Admiral's hologram smiled sadly. "Because we had to become the weapons." The room shifted again, revealing chambers filled with strange crystal containers. Inside each one floated something that looked like pure light given form. "You see," the Admiral explained, "we discovered that consciousness itself is the ultimate weapon against the Void Hunters. A mind that fully understands reality can reshape it. But reaching that understanding, it changes you. It takes generations. We didn't have generations to spare." Dr. Reed's tentacles had turned a deep purple of understanding. "You transformed yourselves," she whispered. "Your whole species." "Yes," Admiral Walker nodded. "Every human who could chose to transform their consciousness into pure energy, becoming part of these ships. We are the fleet. Our minds power its weapons. Our understanding shapes its defenses. But we're sleeping, waiting. We can't wake up fully. The power would burn out any systems currently existing in the galaxy. That's why we need you." He gestured, and complex diagrams appeared in the air. "These are the plans for the interfaces you'll need to build. They'll let you communicate with us, let you guide our power. But more importantly, they'll let you understand how we think, how we see reality. Because that's what you'll need to fight them." "How long do we have?" one of the scientists asked. The Admiral's face grew grave. "The Void Hunters should reach the galaxy's edge within the next solar cycle. When they do, they'll start feeding. You'll see systems at the edge of the galaxy begin to vanish. That's your warning. You have until then to prepare, to build the interfaces, to learn to think like we did." The hologram began to fade. "Everything you need is here. The knowledge, the technology, the weapons. But remember, they're not weapons in the way you think of them. They're possibilities, choices, dreams. That's what humanity became in the end. We became dreams of a better future, waiting to be awakened." As the Admiral's image disappeared, the room returned to normal. But nothing felt normal anymore. The scientists looked at each other, then at the ships around them, seeing them with new eyes. These weren't just vessels of metal and energy. They were vessels of humanity's last, greatest sacrifice. And somewhere, at the edge of the galaxy, the darkness was beginning to move. It happened exactly as Admiral Walker had predicted. The first sign was a missing patrol ship at the edge of the galaxy. Not destroyed, missing. When investigators arrived at its last known location, They found no debris, no energy signatures, no signs of battle. It was as if that section of space had never contained a ship at all. Then it happened again. And again. Captain Stone stood before the Galactic Council, his four eyes fixed on the massive display showing the growing void at the galaxy's edge. 3 star systems have vanished in the past week, he reported. Not destroyed. Erased. Just like the humans warned us. The council chamber erupted in argument. Some demanded immediate military action. Others insisted on diplomatic attempts to communicate with the Void Hunters. A few simply wanted to evacuate the outer systems and hide. Our most advanced weapons are useless, the military commander announced, his metallic scales rattling with frustration. We sent our newest battleship to investigate. It fired everything we had: plasma cannons, quantum torpedoes, reality bombs. The weapons didn't fail. They simply never existed once they entered the void zone. Dr. Reed stepped forward, her tentacles now a steady, determined blue. We have weapons that will work, she said. The humans left them to us. We've spent the last month studying their technology. It's not just advanced. It's different. They didn't try to fight against the laws of physics. They learned to work with them in ways we never imagined. She activated a hologram showing the ancient fleet. These ships don't just travel through space. They're part of it. The humans found a way to make their technology so simple, so perfect, that reality itself accepts it as natural. That's why the Void Hunters can't erase it. You can't erase something that's fundamentally part of the universe itself. Another star system vanished from the display. We don't have time for more research, Captain Stone said. We need to launch the fleet now. But we haven't finished building all the interfaces, one of the scientists protested. We've only completed enough to operate 30% of the ships. Then we'll use 30%, Stone replied. Better than watching more systems disappear. The council chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. They had laughed at the human fleet, dismissed it as primitive. Now it was their only hope. Very well, the council leader said finally. Captain Stone, you and Dr. Reed will lead the defense fleet. All available resources will be devoted to completing more interface systems. The alert sirens cut him off. The main display showed a new threat. The Void Hunters had increased their speed. Vast shapes of absolute darkness moved between the stars, leaving emptiness in their wake. They weren't ships or creatures in any normal sense. They were holes in reality itself, moving with purpose toward the galaxy's populated worlds. How long do we have? Someone asked. Dr. Reed checked her instruments. At their current speed, 3 days until they reached the first major colony. Launch the fleet, the council leader ordered. Now, the ancient human ships came to life. Their seemingly crude metal surfaces began to ripple and shift, revealing the true complexity hidden beneath their simple exterior. The 30% they could control moved in perfect formation, their human consciousness-powered cores humming with energy that had waited 15,000 years to be unleashed. Captain Stone took his place on the flagship's bridge, now transformed into something that barely resembled a normal ship's control room. The walls had become transparent, showing the true space around them, not just the physical space, but the quantum foam beneath it, the strings of probability that held reality together. All ships report ready, Dr. Reed announced from her station, where her tentacles interfaced with the human technology. The consciousness cores are awakening. Stone looked at the approaching darkness. Humanity's ancient fleet against the devourers of reality itself. Perhaps, he thought, this was why humans had seemed so primitive. They had spent all their energy and genius not on impressing their galactic neighbors, but on preparing for this moment. All ships, he commanded, advance. The first battle was a disaster. Even with the human fleet's advanced technology, they weren't ready. The ships worked perfectly, but their crews couldn't think fast enough to use them properly. It was like giving ancient stone tools to a master craftsman. The tools were perfect, but the user didn't understand how to make them work. Pull back. Captain Stone ordered as another Void Hunter approached. His crew had managed to save 3 colony worlds, but they'd lost 5 ships in the process. Not destroyed. The human ships were too tough for that, but their crew's minds had burned out trying to control them. Dr. Reed worked frantically at her station, her tentacles changing colors rapidly as she processed data from the battle. "Captain," she said suddenly, "I think I understand what we're doing wrong. Look at these neural patterns." The display showed 2 brain wave patterns. One was chaotic, complicated, full of peaks and valleys. The other was surprisingly simple, almost musical in its rhythm. "The first pattern is how our brains work," she explained. "The second is how human brains worked. They didn't just think differently, they thought simply. When they looked at space and time, they saw music, not math." Stone watched as another colony ship escaped through their defensive line. "That's fascinating, Doctor, but how does it help us?" "Because," Reed's tentacles turned bright with excitement, "I found something in the ship's database. The humans didn't just leave us their ships. They left us their entire educational system. Not just what they learned, but how they learned to think." She brought up more displays, showing strange but simple patterns. "Look at these. They're mental exercises. The humans used them to train their children to see reality differently. We've been trying to force our way into understanding their technology, but we need to learn to think like they did first." Stone was skeptical, but they had no other choice. The Void Hunters were still coming, and their current tactics weren't working. "How long will this training take?" he asked. "That's the beautiful part," Reed replied. "The humans designed it to work fast. They knew whoever found their fleet would need to learn quickly. We can start teaching the crews right now." The next 12 hours changed everything. The crew members who volunteered for the training reported strange experiences. At first, it was like trying to learn a new language. Then suddenly, things would click into place. They'd look at space around them and see not just stars and planets, but the flows of gravity, the currents of time, the music of reality itself. "It's like learning to see color after only knowing black and white," one navigator reported. The humans didn't build complicated machines. They built instruments to play the universe like music. More displays showed the difference. Where modern galactic ships tried to force their way through space, the human ships sang to it. Where current weapons tried to destroy, human weapons convinced small pieces of reality to politely step aside for a moment. It wasn't about power, it was about harmony. "They weren't primitive at all," Dr. Reed said as she reviewed the data. "They reached the same conclusion that children sometimes reach before adults, that the simplest answer is often the right one. While we made our technology more complex, they made theirs simpler and simpler until it was practically perfect." A warning alarm interrupted them. 3 Void Hunters were approaching a heavily populated system. The crew looked to Captain Stone, their eyes now holding a new understanding. "Remember your training," he said. "Don't fight the ships. Work with them. The humans designed these vessels to be part of the universe's song. We just need to help them sing." The fleet moved out again, but differently this time. No more brute force attempts to blast through space. Now they flowed like water, curved like light, danced like gravity. The ships moved in patterns that looked simple but contained depths that the Void Hunters couldn't comprehend. For the first time since the battle began, Captain Stone smiled. They weren't just using human technology anymore. They were beginning to understand it. The Void Hunters had reached the core systems of the galaxy. Billions of lives depended on the next few hours. The human fleet, now crewed by beings who were beginning to understand its true power, formed a defensive line around the most populated worlds. Captain Stone watched from the flagship's bridge as Dr. Reed made final adjustments to their strategy. The displays around them showed reality in its true form, waves of possibility flowing like rivers through space, currents of time swirling between the stars. "The Void Hunters are approaching in attack formation," Reed announced, her tentacles steady and focused. "But there's something different about their pattern this time. They're adapting." She was right. The dark shapes moving between the stars were no longer just erasing reality. They were twisting it, creating false paths and traps. They had learned from their earlier defeats. They're trying to think like we do, Stone realized. Like the humans did. They're learning to play with reality too. A message flashed across their screens. More ships were going offline. Not destroyed, but their crews couldn't handle the mental strain of working with the human technology. Even with their new understanding, controlling the ships was pushing their minds to the breaking point. "We need more power," Reed said, studying the complex but elegant patterns flowing across her display. The human consciousness cores in the ships. They're not just power sources. They're teachers, guides, but we're not connecting with them fully. Stone looked at the approaching Void Hunters. "What do you mean?" "The interfaces we built. We made them too complicated." Reed's tentacles changed color as she worked through the problem. "We need to simplify." The humans stored their minds in these ships, but we're trying to talk to them through layers of technology. We need to speak to them directly. She brought up the original designs they'd found in the fleet's database. "Look at these patterns. They're not just technical blueprints. They're like music notes. The humans turned their minds into songs, and we need to learn to sing with them." A Void Hunter attacked, its darkness reaching out to erase a nearby star. The fleet responded, their ships moving in harmony to redirect the attack. But it wasn't enough. They were losing ground. "How do we do it?" Stone asked. "How do we connect better?" Reed's answer was interrupted by a new hologram appearing on the bridge. It was Admiral Walker again, but different this time. More like a presence than an image. "You're starting to understand," the Admiral said, his voice resonating with the ship itself. "But understanding isn't enough. You need to let go. Your technology tries to control reality. Ours became part of it. Let go of your need to control." Stone looked at his crew. They were tired, their minds strained from trying to force the ships to work. "Everyone," he ordered, "stop trying to control your stations. Listen to them instead. Feel how the ships want to move." The change was immediate. As the crew relaxed their rigid control, the ship's movements became more fluid, more natural. The human consciousness cores, no longer restricted by overcomplicated interfaces, began to flow into their thoughts. Suddenly, they could see everything. The Void Hunters weren't just enemies. They were wounds in reality, places where the universe's song had been silenced. And the human ships weren't just weapons. They were instruments to help reality remember its music. "There," Reed said softly, her tentacles glowing with newfound understanding. "That's what the humans were trying to teach us. They didn't build weapons to destroy the Void Hunters. They built tools to heal the universe." The remaining ships of the fleet began to move in perfect synchronization, their crews no longer fighting to control them, but working in harmony with the human consciousness cores. They weren't just fighting anymore. They were about to perform a symphony written 15,000 years ago, a song of reality itself. And the Void Hunters were about to hear it. The final battle didn't look like a battle at all. There were no explosions, no dramatic crashes, no traditional weapons fire. Instead, the space between stars filled with light and music as reality itself began to heal. Captain Stone stood on his bridge, but he wasn't just watching anymore. His mind was connected to the human consciousness core, moving with it rather than trying to control it. Through this connection, he finally understood what his 4 eyes had been seeing wrong all along. "The Void Hunters," he said softly, "they're not eating reality. They're running from it. They're afraid of existence itself." Dr. Reed nodded, her tentacles glowing with the same understanding. "That's why the humans built these ships the way they did. The hunters destroy because they don't understand. They never learn to be part of reality's song." The human fleet moved in patterns that looked simple but contained the wisdom of an entire civilization. Each ship became a note in a vast symphony, playing the music of existence itself. The crews weren't fighting anymore. They were teaching. A Void Hunter approached, its darkness reaching out to erase another star. But this time, instead of trying to stop it, the fleet surrounded it with harmony. The ships didn't attack. They simply showed the hunter what it meant to exist, to be part of reality's endless dance. The darkness paused. For the first time since they appeared, the Void Hunters stopped their advance. The emptiness at their core began to fill with light as they experienced what the humans had learned so long ago. The joy of being part of the universe instead of fighting against it. "Look," one of the crew members called out. Where the hunter's void had erased reality, things were coming back. Not exactly as they were before, but similar. Like reality itself was remembering what belonged in those empty spaces. Through their connection with the human consciousness cores, the crew could feel the ancient minds awakening fully, not as separate beings, but as part of the song they were all now playing together. Admiral Walker's presence filled the ship one last time. "Now you understand," he said, his voice like a smile. "Humanity didn't die. We became part of everything. And now so can they." The Void Hunters began to change. Their darkness turned to light as they learned what the humans had prepared to teach them. How to exist without fear, how to be part of reality instead of trying to escape it. Stone watched in amazement as the last hunter transformed. Where there had been creatures of darkness and destruction, there were now beings of light and creation, adding their own notes to reality's song. Dr. Reed's instruments showed something incredible. "Captain," she said, her voice full of wonder, "the hunters' energy patterns. They're starting to match the human consciousness cores. They're learning to think the same way." The battle was over, but it hadn't ended in destruction. Instead, it had ended in transformation. The Void Hunters, who had run from existence for so long, had finally found their place in it. As the fleet regrouped, the crews could feel the human consciousness cores changing. Their purpose was fulfilled. The energy patterns that had once been human minds began to fade, not dying but becoming part of reality itself, just as they had planned. They knew, Stone said, understanding at last. Humans knew they couldn't fight this enemy, so they spent everything they had learning how to save them instead. The final hologram appeared on every ship in the fleet. Admiral Walker, Commander West, and all the humans who had become part of the fleet appeared one last time. "This was always humanity's gift," they said together. "Not to destroy, but to create. Not to fight, but to teach. We didn't build weapons. We built bridges between what is and what could be." As the hologram faded, Dr. Reed's tentacles turned the soft blue of a dawning sky. "They weren't primitive," she said. "They were so advanced that they learned the simplest truth of all. Everything that exists is part of the same song, even the things that try not to be." The human fleet, its purpose finally fulfilled, began to change. The metal of the ships turned to light, spreading out among the stars. Humanity's last gift to the galaxy wasn't their technology or their weapons. It was their way of seeing the beauty in everything, even the darkness that had tried to destroy them. The end.